Well, I always hear the discussion about morality, and I've actually been having a discussion with my brother about, this whole thing, and he obviously has a lot of objections to my atheism, but, I always find it difficult to talk about morality. And Matt, I know that you've discussed about morality probably more than one time or two, but
more than once today.
It's something that always seems to come up, and I never have an answer for anything with regards to morality.
Like what? What's a question that you don't think you have an answer for?
Well, when I'm speaking with my older brother, it's always about, things that happen in the Bible that he tells me context is always important, and I have to look at the time, and I don't see that as beneficial, because if it's wrong to do something, it doesn't matter when it happened. It should just be wrong regardless of the time.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. You can't justify, I know, Matt's, your favorite example is slavery in the Bible.
That's the one I go to most of the time.
And you're absolutely right, too, because, well, no, I'm not going to take your point. Go ahead if you want to present it.
No, it's fine. So the big thing, Nick, is when they say that you have to look at it in the context and you have to look at it at the time, I think you're starting exactly down the right track, which is, okay, please explain to me under what time and what context would it be moral to own another person? Under what time and what context would it be okay to say that a rape victim has to marry the rapist? How is that in any way a good thing? How could it ever be a good thing? And if the most common line that you'll go down is, well, God had to talk to these people in terms that they understood. This is an archaic society. Slavery was the norm, so he had to, gradually soften slavery with the goal of getting rid of it. And that's patently absurd. How weak-ass is their God? If he can tell you not to eat shellfish and mixed fabrics, certainly he can tell you not to own people.
Yeah.
Right.
What kind of weak-ass God are they worshiping that can't tell you that, hey, he's going to give you all the instructions about right and wrong, but on this one big thing, it's just too complicated for people to understand. So he's just going to let them keep having slaves and kind of gradually soften it. Does that make more sense in the context that there is a God who's teaching people about morality, or does it make context in the sense that here's a bunch of people who don't have the first clue about what we understand about morality, who are just making excuses for their own behavior and then attributing it to a God? I know which one sounds more plausible to me.
Have you heard the excuse of, well, where else would these slaves go? They have nothing, and
what difference does that make?
Yeah, and you also heard bullshit arguments. You also heard bullshit responses like that after slavery was made illegal in the United States, right? The slaves need their masters. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous, and that is absolutely immoral. And there's no point where your brother, in this case, is going to sit up and say, gotcha. I mean, you're absolutely right to be comfortable in standing on the point that there are immoral things in there, and you should be able to point them out. And if not, I always say, use it as an example to model that it's okay not to know and look it up. And I mean, you really can't get too much further than that. Nick, I'm seeing in the notes that you had another question.
So what do you got? I love the topics on the show. I always enjoy the discussions about morality and everything. But my older brother he's a scientific mind, and I had a very long conversation with him, and one of his large cruxes for why he believes is because of the second law of thermodynamics. And I just thought, well, that's sort of a strange thing to bring up.
Yeah.
And I know the topic of morality comes up an awful lot when discussing, beliefs or non-beliefs, but have you ever run into arguments from scientific standards of why people believe of closed systems and entropy and all this other stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually, so the second law has actually become kind of a joke because it's only, young earth creationists would use it for a while. And I believe Answers in Genesis, or one of those sites, has a list of arguments they don't think Christians should use anymore. Stuff like the level of dust on the moon is just not high enough for old Earth. Nice. So they go through all these. I'm pretty sure that the laws relating to the second law of thermodynamics are also listed there as arguments that, I could be wrong about that. But I don't know how you get to, therefore there must be a God. Because at best, with any arguments from a scientific standpoint about thermodynamics, if you find something about a scientific understanding of the universe that conflicts with something else, you don't get to just say, well, therefore the answer is God. It's like if evolution were shown to be wrong today, that does not mean that creationism is true. No. You actually have to offer positive evidence for creationism sufficient to justify belief.
Well, and it also has to meet all of the different predictive qualities that the other theory had. Yeah. So, I mean, if you take a look at the theory of evolution, it has predicted different things across archaeology, biology, tons of different fields, and your counter explanation, the creationist explanation, has to be able to account for all of that too. And
I mean, the famous joke about this is that, and I don't know if this actually happened or if it's kind of a glurge urban legend type thing, but there was like a preacher who was using the second law of thermodynamics and was like, just take a look around at the earth and it couldn't be that old because you would need a big, huge source of constant energy being applied to the earth. And, of course, there's the sun right there. But is there a specific about your brother's use of this that is, I don't know, troubling? By the way, if you're not getting good answers from us, go to talkorigins.org, and there's an index to creationist claims with scientific responses to each of these things, including, I think, second law thermodynamics.
Well, no, the main thing that, was his contention was the thought of, well, is the entire universe a closed system? And, I try to look locally at just the sun-earth system, and I know it's not closed, and it just feels weird to try to apply something that only seems to hold true for closed systems and somehow apply it to systems that are open. And
you can use it.
I can't see the connection of therefore God must exist because of this.
So, and I'll probably I'm doing an event with Lawrence Krauss next weekend, and I may talk about this a little bit too. So thanks for prompting a discussion. But one of the things is whether or not the universe is open or closed is irrelevant to whether or not our local system is open or closed. In just the same way that whether or not our local system is open or closed is irrelevant to whether or not the plumbing system in this house, in this building, is open or closed. So if it only applies to closed systems, and you at least know that this system is closed, then it applies. Whether or not it applies to the entire universe is a separate issue. You don't get to kind of extrapolate and just go, well, you do the same thing with the first cause arguments. Well, there had to be something before this. Well, there had to be something that caused this. Well, there had to be something that caused this. And they put a stop in it as, well, therefore there is God who is this uncaused cause. And that is actually one step further than we can rationally justify. At best, we should say we don't know what the actual cause of the universe is, and that there may be a multiverse or whatever that is essentially eternal, so that we don't have to keep going. But Carl Sagan famously, or maybe not so famously, pointed out in response to this attempt from God believers to put a stop at God, because they argue that an infinite regress is impossible, and if you don't put a stop here, you would just have to keep going. And Sagan replied, why? Why not keep going? Just the pen that we should be sticking in it is not, we don't know, therefore God did it. The pen we should be sticking in it is, we don't know, so let's keep looking.
Yep. Awesome. I think you said it perfectly. You can't explain a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery. You can't just say that, my special invisible friend did it, and, that's all. And you do get a whole bunch of other pseudo-science-y sounding type explanations that people use to try and prove the existence of God. You talking about young Earth creationism is absolutely one of them. The fun thing is if you are talking to your brother about it, hop on a computer, say, let's look it up together. And that'll take the wind right out of his sails, really.
There's two other quickie options. One is your brother could call in to either Talk Heathen or Atheist Experience, and then you don't necessarily have to feel on the spot for a discussion. Somebody else can, although we're not experts, and he can dismiss us. Here's the thing. Let's assume that the second law of thermodynamics could be used in a way to demonstrate the existence of a God. Let's assume that he's right about that. Don't you think that somebody would have done that and gotten a Nobel Prize, that they'd have won the Templeton Foundation Prize, that they would have won every major award for demonstrating how the second law of thermodynamics demonstrates that there must in fact be a God, and then we wouldn't be having these conversations at all. There'd be no reason to call in, and yet the bulk of scientists do not, or the bulk of National Academy of Sciences don't believe in a personal God. Most of them that have an understanding and expertise in here don't believe that a God can or should be appealed to as an explanation for an unknown. And the only answer that someone, I'm not going to say your brother would come with this, but the only answer that I've heard is that there's some massive scientific conspiracy to shut down real proofs of God. And that's bizarre considering the overwhelming majority of people on the planet believe in a God of some form. And if there was proof for it, yes, you would still have deniers, just like you'd have deniers of, climate change or whether or not vaccines cause autism or whatever. You're always going to have moon landing. You're going to have people who deny everything. But the idea that everybody involved with the Templeton Foundation who are actually working to prove that God exists are in on this conspiracy so much that they wouldn't give an award.
Hold on, you're not in on the conspiracy?
I am not.
We got to get you a check, man. I mean, when you get important enough, maybe you get famous.
It won't matter because I'm not a lizard person, and the lizard people control everything.
Got it. Yeah, no, you're right.
Hopefully that's a little helpful, Nick. I've used this kind of as a gotcha in the past of, where's the Nobel Prize for proving that God exists? And if it was just something as simple as saying, we all agree on the second law of thermodynamics, we all agree on whether or not we're in an open or closed system, therefore we can make this claim, and therefore God. Man, if it's that simple, that
But it never is. They're going to hold on to it as long as they think it's useful, and then ditch it to the next thing. That's my experience.
So, some of them will give it up.
Hopefully.
But we'll see.
Yeah, Nick, if there's nothing else, I think we're going to head on to the next caller.
Well, I appreciate you taking my call. I'm glad I got a chance to call in. Eric, it's nice to see you're out of Jamie's basement. I'm glad you were able to escape from there.
It's stuffy in there. You know what? That bastard is hiding from me right now. Say
hi to Jamie for me. Matt, I can't appreciate what you've at least done for me. I'm sure, hopefully, I'll get a chance to talk to you more in the future. I love talking to you guys, listening to you guys, and I'm sure I'll call back again.
Well, keep an eye on Facebook because I'm doing like a multi-part world tour. The first 8, we're doing 8 stops in Canada, and then we're going to do either a Europe or U.S. leg, and Denver may be among the cities. So keep an eye on that.
Awesome.
Definitely. And also keep in touch with the show, too. We do have a pretty active group. I'm looking at the live chat, and it is blowing up. Hop on the Reddit.
I should look. Maybe there'd be people on there saying, Matt's an idiot, too.
Reddit.com/r/talkheathen, talkheathen.com. You can look up Talk Heathen on Facebook. And I really want to get those that community aspect going. I want people to be able to contribute and help, especially if they see something that I do that's really dumb and want to counter it. I started describing a fallacy that was absolutely wrong on episode 2, I think. And someone right away online was like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, I screwed up.
So this will make you feel better. This is actually one of my favorite anecdotes of all time. Russell and I were doing an episode of the Atheist Experience, and a guy calls in and asks us, what do you guys think about the ontological argument? And Russell and I spent probably 10 or 15 minutes, if I had to guess, between the two of us, just going through in great detail and demolishing the cosmological arguments. And we got to the end, and he was like, that's great and all, but that's not the ontological argument. And we were like, what? I don't know, it's not like it's something that we didn't know. Both of us had studied these. It happens.
Yeah.
We are fallible.
And the funny thing is when I read it, I thought, oh man, this dude's pissed. And I replied, hey, you know what? You're absolutely right. I was wrong. They replied back, hey, awesome, cool, fan of the show, But so you never really know. But Nick, we'd absolutely love to have you in the community. So keep in touch, all right, man?
I appreciate you taking my call. I've recently had just been more open about my atheism, and you guys have all helped a lot with me getting there. So I appreciate the call.
Rock on. Thank you, man. Happy to hear it.
Yeah, you too.
It actually was the atheist experience that convinced me to be an out atheist.
Awesome.
It was. It was seeing the show and realizing that I was in a safe enough spot in my life that I should kind of be an example of what is an atheist, right? We're not baby-eating monsters. Well, not all of us are baby-eating monsters. And people should actually get to see that that's okay. We can still be neighbors. We can still be friends. And we can and are good people most of the time. And that's worth it. So I absolutely appreciate it.
We're as good or bad as any other demographic.
Yeah.
We may be better in some areas. We may be worse in some areas.
True.
But we're people. It's funny to me to watch. I hear from people who have had difficulties with their families, which I find kind of sad. On one level, I kind of get it. That I could never put my religious belief above my love for family, children, etc. Specifically children. But and I don't even have any children, so maybe I wouldn't.
Jamie is your son, isn't he?
Yeah, adopted.
Oh, okay.
And not in any legal sense where he's entitled to any of my stuff should I die.
No, he just He's just there.
He's adorable. We like to have him around.
Yeah, you gotta tell him to do his laundry.
Clean your room.
Wears the shirt inside out. It's kind of weird. But yeah, no, that's really awesome.